Last week we were talking about one-on-one conversations. This week we're going to talk about interacting with groups, which is very different because the people you're interacting with, they're already getting their sense of self and their sense of self-worth from the group. It's also a little bit more complex because there's multiple dynamics that can be at work. So if we're in the case of a group where the members know each other and don't know you, in the mind of the neurotypicals that are in the group, the subconscious program that's running is, should I exclude this person? Now, trying to resolve this question is going to be very anxiogenic for the neurotypicals because continued standing in the group depends on them making the right choice. Unfortunately, there's a much higher price to pay to initially accept someone that ends up being rejected than if you initially reject someone who ends up being accepted. For instance, if you were opening with a joke or a funny story, starting your interaction that way, there's two cases that can occur. The majority of people will laugh, or the majority of people won't. Now, the very interesting thing is that if your initial joke is funny, is found to be funny, the other stories that you're going to tell will elicit laughter much more easily. Whereas if the majority of people didn't laugh, no matter how actually funny the next stories you're going to tell are, they're not going to be effective. Very difficult to recover from that. In the case of individuals within the group, if your initial story is found to be funny by the majority, the person who does not laugh will not lose much standing in the group. However, if the majority of the group does not find your story funny, the person who does laugh will lose much more standing. If you have a chance, observe the group beforehand. Look at the interaction between the individuals. You will find, if you observe correctly, that there are people within the group that others match in their tone, in their rhythm, in their posture. These people are going to be the gatekeepers of acceptance. The others will be looking to them for their reaction to you. Especially be attentive if you know some of the people in the group. You don't know the group as a whole, but some of the individuals in there you have had past interaction with. It will be much easier for you to identify who they are trying to match, what changes are occurring in their behavior, because you already know their behavior one-on-one. Another set of circumstance that you can encounter is interacting with a group where the individuals already know you. Now that's going to be very different because in the group's culture there will be an identity for you that exists. They are going to have expectations based on your past behavior. They will react in certain ways to that behavior, and it's encoded and automated over time. If you want to modify your identity within a group's culture, that can be very difficult because a culture will resist change. Not only does the culture resist change, but you will have developed habits and automated behavior patterns of your own, because anytime you interact with a group, you participate in its set of cultural values and cultural norms. Often after some work of understanding ourselves and understanding the dynamics of communication, we will want to reinvent ourselves, to change the way we are perceived by others. The process to do this is going to be rather complex when dealing with groups that have a cultural identity assigned to you. Naturally, the easiest time to do this is if you've spent some time away from the group. You've been on vacation, you've been away traveling, whatever set of circumstance that has led you away from the group for a certain time will have weakened the expectations that the group has of you. So it will be much easier, providing that you're consistent in resisting your own automatic patterns, it will be easier to create a new set of expectations and thus a new identity within the group's culture. In the case of a group of people who don't know each other, who meet for the first time, it's again very different. There will be an initial competition for the positions of gatekeepers of acceptance and setters of the group's culture. If you don't have the personality or the skills to be one of these people, you can still influence the way this process is going to turn out. Consciously or not, there's some people who are competing for this cultural standing, to set the culture and to act as gatekeepers of acceptance. Be very, very attentive to the people who are competing. They might be doing it consciously, they might not be doing it consciously at all. It might be just the natural way that they are that puts them in this competition. There are going to be a lot of people who compete for these positions out of insecurity. And they're usually always trouble. And there's a few people who you will find radiate a certain level of competence. Be especially attentive to people who try to unite the group into exclusion of certain members. This is the easiest method to achieve position as gatekeeper of acceptance in a group, because neurotypicals feel most secure in their belonging when they are participating in exclusion of others. Some people will be doing this because it's an easy trick that very often works, and some people will be doing it because they're sociopaths. There are people who are, consciously or not, competing for positions of gatekeepers of acceptance and for setters of the group's culture that you find are probably the ones who will set the culture that you would most like to have for the group, the culture that will be most constructive for you. There are ways to assist the rise of these people into these positions. You can't just say it out loud because it's an unconscious process in the minds of neurotypicals. They're not aware that it's going on. And if you say it out loud, it's not subtext. Body language is one of the more powerful ways that you can use to affect these types of outcomes. It's the type of nonverbal cues that other neurotypicals will be most sensitive to. Matching your posture to resemble theirs will give something that's called social proof and will strengthen the position of the person you're trying to assist. So we've covered a lot of really subtle and interesting stuff this week. Now, as usual, try it out, experiment, and give me feedback as to what your experiences are with trying that. Next week, we're going to have a little bit of a change of pace. We're going to be talking about self-control, the ability to regulate our internal state. Because all of these tricks are very difficult to use if our own social anxieties are making the noticing of the patterns difficult or impossible.